Japan is having a moment. What I mean is, the world is messy right now. The US has become an unpredictable superpower threatening to invade Greenland one minute and actually attacking Iran the next. Then you have China, a growing power that every country trades with, but no country fully trusts, leaving everyone with few alternatives, especially in Asia. And that's where Japan comes in.
Japan's been very successful, I think, in networking the region. So it has its one ally, the US, one security ally, which is the most important foreign policy relationship Japan has. But it's buttressing that with all these, by building these networks. So Japan, Philippines, Japan, Australia, Japan, India, Japan, Vietnam, and so on.
That's Robert Ward. He's Senior Fellow and Japan Chair at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. That's the organization that hosts Asia's big annual security summit, the Shangri-La Dialogue that just took place. Robert's also the author of Evaluating Japan's New Grand Strategy. Now, while Japan is not a superpower like the US or China, its strategic importance has become crucial for the region. Here's how Robert describes it.
Japan is what I would call a global middle power. So there are a couple of others like Germany, UK, France, perhaps. In terms of Japan's place in the world at the moment, it's fascinating how Japan's role has changed over the last sort of 30 or so years. If you remember the first Gulf War, where Japan didn't really know what to do, bankrolled the operation, but didn't get any thanks for it, and was sort of paralyzed internally. You fast forward to particularly Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Since then, I think you've seen a number of things happening. One is that Japan, for the US now, is a critical bulwark for US presence in Asia. Without Japan, the US cannot credibly claim to be a residential power in Asia. So Japan for the US, I think its strategic importance has just risen hugely, and that's partly, of course, relating to the threats from China that we've been talking about. Japan also now, for Southeast Asia and other Asian countries, it sees itself as a champion of the rules-based international order. So Japan's a global middle power. A lot of these other countries, most of them are much smaller than Japan, and they don't want to have to choose between either China on the one hand or the US on the other. So Japan is really sort of projecting itself as a supporter of the rules-based international order, which of course all small countries need in order to feel protected. And you have one more thing happening here, which is Japan's relations with NATO and with the EU in defense industrial terms, in economic security terms, economic terms. This is another sort of important area to watch as Japan sort of tries to network its allies and partners to create to amplify its ability to do what it thinks it needs to do, but also to create strategic complexity for countries like China and Russia and others on the other hand.
Japan sees good relations with other countries near and far as one way to manage its biggest security challenge, China's interest in taking over Taiwan.
It centers on what Japan sees as China's menacing of Taiwan. Taiwan is for Japan a really important strategic interest in terms of stability around Taiwan. And one of the reasons for that is that Taiwan is only just over 100 kilometers from Japanese territory, Japan's westernmost island of Yonaguni. So Japan is sort of most immediately worried about that. But there are other things too. They include China's strategic alignment with Russia, which is growing closer, particularly since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And then, of course, for Japan, Russia's alignment with North Korea, which is also close to Japan, is another area of concern. And within this, of course, Japan's worried about China's military spending. This is rising very quickly, and for Japan, it's not transparent enough, and these give great cause for concern to Japan, given Japan's other concerns about what China's doing. There's a specifically Japanese concern here about China's territorial needling over the Senkaku Islands, which are not that far from Taiwan, which Japan controls and China claims. So all around the Taiwan area, there are concerns for Japan about what's going on with China, in addition to the concerns about North Korea and Russia as well.
So, China is seeing this ramped up security activity from Japan and decides one way of countering it is to invoke history. Beijing's basically going, hey guys, the Philippines and other countries across Asia, remember when Japan invaded you in World War II? You don't want to trust Tokyo.
And you can see that through some of the rhetoric that's been coming out, particularly since last year. About China's been talking about the new rise of Japanese fascism, Japan as a threat to the post-World War II order, and so on. And China hopes that will resonate within Asia, many countries of which, of course, have memories of Japanese imperialism in the 1930s and early 1940s.
And what's interesting about that narrative that China is pushing is that it isn't working. 80 years after the end of World War II, countries have moved on. They're less focused on Japan's wrongs from the past and more focused on what Japan is doing right at this moment in time.
There's the Yusof Ishak survey that comes out of Singapore, and Japan's consistently, year after year, shown as the most trusted country. So Japan has built up some very good relationships over the decades, investment, in industrial interest, political interest, and so on. So Japan has I think, pretty good standing in the region. The Philippines has very significant concerns about what China's doing in the South China Sea, sort of the territorial needling and bullying and so on, and that has driven this. Plus, of course, Philippines is concerned about Taiwan as well, and that has driven the Philippines and Japan much more closer together. President Marcos was in Tokyo recently with Prime Minister Takaichi Sanai, and they're elevating the strategic relationship there. It was interesting at the recent Shangri-La Dialogue, IISS Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. There was a question to the Defense Minister Koizumi Shinjiro from one of the Chinese delegation, the PLA, a member of the PLA, and he said, well, Defense Minister Koizumi, when are you going to apologise to all the countries that have suffered from Japanese predations during the imperial era, 1930s, early 1940s, and Koizumi-san obviously pushed back on that. But if you looked at the relations, what was going on outside the plenary, and how Koizumi-san was interacting very actively with lots of delegates from some of the Southeast Asian states, plus, of course, the support for him from the Philippines. That was very vocal, as you'd expect, given the state of Japan-Philippines relations, but also from other Southeast Asian countries. Plus, of course, you've got Japan's relations with South Korea, which, despite concerns that these may not be so smooth, given Prime Minister Takaichi's record, and of course President Lee in South Korea is viewed as perhaps being less friendly to Japan, this relationship is actually doing pretty well. So there are many countries in the region that have had poor experiences of Japanese imperialism. But if you fast forward to now, that is not borne out in the state of relations between Japan and many countries in the region. So the PLA members' question at Shangri-La Dialogue just looked a little bit unusual, a bit not a reflection of the reality on the ground.
Roberts talked about Japan's relationship with the Philippines there and also South Korea, but the list goes on from Vietnam to India and beyond.
And the importance of Vietnam for Japan was highlighted yet again in a recent visit by Prime Minister Takaichi to Hanoi. And at that visit, she outlined her update to Japan's sort of framework for its foreign policy. It calls it free and open Indo-Pacific concepts of FOI. She chose Hanoi as the location of that. That was symbolically important given the importance of Japan's relations with Vietnam, and of course we've talked about the Philippines. But if you zoom out a bit more, you've got Japan-India relations, which are pretty good and have been good for a long time. There's industrial relations, there's overseas aid relations, and so on. But also, of course, Japan-India relations as they sit within the quadrilateral security dialogue known as the Quad, Australia, US, Japan, and India.
All this adds up to a Japan that's spending more on defense and building more security relationships with its neighbors. Japan has done this incrementally, methodically over the years as relations with China deteriorated and as China became a bigger and bigger bully in the Indo-Pacific.
I would say that Japan is being more realistic about what it has to do. And as thanks to some of these changes that Abe Shinzo made, Kishida Fumio as Prime Minister made, and now Takaichi Sanae as Prime Minister is making, its sort of agency within the region and beyond is increasing. But this realism comes from, and the urgency of the need to implement change comes from Japan's fears about China. China is very close. China is an immediate neighbor. North Korea, Russia are also neighbors. So Japan really does feel that the threat to its stability in the region is pretty intense, and that is why you're seeing the acceleration of defense reforms. There'll be three new strategic documents published this year: a national security strategy, national defense strategy, and the defense build-up plan. These plot the course for Japanese security and defense over the coming years. And this year's will be particularly important. So lots of changes coming.
So what do you think? Where are you from, and does your country have good relations with Japan? Do you think that relationship is important as a hedge in these geopolitically uncertain times? Let us know in the comments. That's all for now. DW News is giving you the latest and also sharing deep dives on here and across the rest of social media. I'm Melissa Chan. Until next time.